All right, everyone, welcome. Today we're going to do a deep dive into one of the most fundamental mechanisms in all of microeconomics. We're talking about the long-run adjustment process in a perfectly competitive market. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory from a textbook. This is the real, invisible, and often pretty ruthless force that shapes prices and profits in tons of industries all over the world. Let's just start with this quote because it perfectly, and I mean perfectly, captures the dynamic we're about to explore. I want you to really hold this image in your mind. The second that a big, juicy, above-average profit shows up in a market, it sends out this signal, an irresistible signal. And that signal attracts a swift, powerful, and totally predictable reaction from competitors. This isn't some flaw in the system you see. This is the system, working with an almost scary level of efficiency. So here's our roadmap. First up, we're going to look at that profit signal, the thing that kicks this whole process off. Then we'll watch as the competitors react and come flooding into the market. After that, we'll trace exactly what that does to supply and, of course, to the price. Next, we're going to demystify a concept that a lot of people get wrong, zero economic profit. And finally, we'll talk about the ultimate fate of any business in a market like this one. Okay, let's get into our first section, the profit signal. Think of this as the catalyst. It's the starting gun that fires and kicks off this whole chain reaction of adjustment. We really need to understand what this signal is and why it is so incredibly powerful. To make this all feel a bit more real, let's use a simple case study. Picture a small tourist village, and in this village, there's just one homestay. Now, after this homestay pays for absolutely everything, we're talking electricity, water, cleaning, and even a fair wage to the owner for all their hard work, it's still clearing a pure profit of 150,000 rupiah. Every single night. This is the extra money on top of all the necessary expenses. Now, what's really cool is that economists have a specific term for this extra money, this easy money. That 150,000 rupiah isn't just profit, it's what we call supernormal profit. And the definition is key here. It's any profit that is more than the bare minimum you'd need to just keep the business running. It's the gravy. It's the bonus that makes this whole venture look incredibly attractive. But here's the thing. That supernormal profit only really matters because of another key idea in perfect competition: low barriers to entry. This is absolutely critical. It just means there's nothing major stopping someone else from jumping into the market and doing the exact same thing. You don't need a special patent, you don't need a government license, you don't need millions of dollars. In our homestay example, what's the barrier to entry? Well, it's about as low as it gets. All you need is a spare room. So here's the crucial point. You take those visible, juicy, supernormal profits and you combine them with super low barriers to entry. What do you get? You get an incredibly powerful economic signal. It's like a giant flashing neon sign over the village, and it's screaming, opportunity here, easy money. That profit isn't a secret. It's broadcasting to everyone that there's an imbalance, and the market is practically programmed to correct it. All right, so what's the next logical step? The reaction. And in a market like this, it's not a maybe, it's not a perhaps, it is an absolute inevitability. The sharks have smelled the profit in the water, and you better believe they are on their way. And this is where the theory hits reality. The neighbors of our successful homestay owner, they're not blind. They see the guests coming and going. They hear that business is booming. And they do some pretty simple math in their heads and come to a very rational conclusion. Hey, wait a minute. I've got a spare room that's just sitting there empty. I can do that too. This is a perfect example of a rational person responding to a very clear incentive. And we're not talking about a small trickle here. This is a flood. In our example, that profit signal is so strong that 50 new homestays open up in this little village. Just pause for a second and think about what that means. The supply of rooms available in this tiny market has just exploded by 50 times, practically overnight. So this brings us right to the bedrock principle of economics, right? Supply and demand. We've just seen a massive, monumental increase in the number of suppliers. Let's assume the number of tourists who want to visit, the demand, hasn't changed at all. With this huge surge in supply, but the same level of demand, what logically has to happen to the price of a room for the night? Okay, now we're going to trace exactly how that flood of new competitors starts to force the price down. This isn't some kind of magic. It's a predictable, mechanical process. This is the squeeze in action. Really, it's a simple three-step chain reaction. First, you've got the lure, right? That supernormal profit acting as the bait. Second, you get the reaction. 50 new entrepreneurs rushing in to grab a piece of that profit. And third, the result. On a graph, the entire market supply curve shifts way over to the right. That just means there are way more rooms available at every possible price. So let's visualize this with some numbers. Let's say the original price was 350,000 rupiah. Well, when all those new homestays open, they've got to attract customers, right? So maybe they start offering rooms for 300,000 rupiah. That forces the original guy and everyone else to match that price. But as even more rooms become available, the competition gets fierce, pushing the rate down to 250,000 rupiah. This downward slide just keeps going, relentlessly, until it finally hits a floor. And in our case, that floor is 200,000 rupiah. So this is the key question. Why does it stop at 200,000? That's not a random number. The price drop stops at the exact point where it equals the average total cost, what economists call the ATC, of running the homestay. At that price, the money you get from renting a room for one night exactly covers all your costs, and that includes the owner's fair salary. That 150,000 rupiahs in supernormal profit, it has been completely squeezed out of the market. The easy money has officially vanished. This leads us to the final state of the market, what we call the long-run equilibrium. And it's all about a concept that honestly trips up a lot of students when they first learn it. It's this idea of zero economic profit. It's so important that we really take our time and unpack what this actually means. So let's get to formal definition on the table. Zero economic profit is the point where a firm's total revenue is equal to its total costs. Now, the most important part of that definition is the phrase total costs. Because in economics, that doesn't just mean your bills and your rent, it also includes all your implicit costs. Most importantly, the owner's opportunity cost. What could they be earning if they were doing something else? That's why we also call this normal profit. This slide is so important because we have to clear up a huge misconception. When you hear the phrase zero profit, your brain probably goes to, oh no, the business is failing, it's about to shut down. But in economics, that's just not what it means. What it actually means is the business is perfectly healthy. It's sustainable. The owner is taking home a normal salary, all the bills are getting paid, the business is doing just fine. It's just not making anyone fabulously rich anymore. So let's be absolutely crystal clear. A business earning what we call normal profit, or zero economic profit, is a stable, functioning company. It's covering all its operating costs, it's paying all of its bills, it's paying the owner a fair, competitive salary for their time and effort. It is surviving, not failing. And, most importantly for our story, that shiny signal that attracted all the competitors, the supernormal profit, it's gone. The incentive for new people to jump in has vanished. The market is now stable. So let's wrap this all up. What is the big picture here? What does this entire process mean for any business or any entrepreneur who's trying to make it in a super competitive, commoditized market? The whole sequence reveals this just inescapable logic of perfect competition. Any surplus profit, any blood in the water, will get noticed. Competitors will pour in, supply will go up, prices will come down, until that surplus profit is totally competed away. And you're left with a market where every firm is just breaking even, in economic terms. This is the inevitable destiny of markets, where one company's product is basically identical to everyone else's. And so that leaves us, and you, as future business leaders, with the most important question of all. If this relentless profit squeeze is the default fate for a standard business, how do you build one that can actually escape it? How do you create a brand, or a unique service, or some kind of real barrier to entry that protects your profits from this inevitable flood of competition? Answering that question? Well, that's the whole game of business strategy.